Alright, today I have another pick a card reading. We're gonna be taking a look at how you unconsciously influence other people around you. So basically there's readings separated into like two sections. The first one being like the certain energy that you have, that you carry that does the influencing. And then the other set of cards is how that affects the people around you. So yeah, kind of an interesting idea. I did a little brainstorming with Chat GPT to come up with some pick a card topics, and this was one of the ones that I found to be pretty interesting. So I wanted to do it, and hopefully you guys are interested in it too. So yeah, it's unconsciously, so you may be unaware of this, and maybe this is new news for you, but I kind of have a feeling for most of you, you might have a more subconscious awareness of this. So, and maybe somewhat aware of these things and how this affects people around you, but maybe not fully aware. I don't know. We'll see. There's four piles to choose from, so go ahead and choose your pile, and we'll get into your reading. All right, pile one, welcome to your reading. So, we're going to find out how you unconsciously influence people around you. And we're going to be kind of taking a look at. So, if you skip the beginning, the reading is kind of split into two sections. The first one being the energy that exists within you that unconsciously influences other people, and then how that specific energy does affect other people. The first thing I noticed with your pile, with the crystal on your pile, when you look at this in person, it looks gray, but on camera, it looks a lot more blue, which is kind of interesting. So it kind of make me think that perhaps one of the ways that you unconsciously influence people around you is the way you communicate your speech, the things you say. And maybe you're not fully aware of just how much the things you say can affect or influence other people. Um, and it could also be not necessarily the way you communicate, but maybe specific like ideas that you have about certain things. So let's take a look at kind of like your first set of cards. So you have the Scythe, you have the High Priestess, so some Cancer energy with the High Priestess. You have Pondweed. Now this one was interesting. Oh, is this the one? Okay. So funny little story. The first time I used this deck uh, was in my What's Your Next Life Adventure reading. And this came out, I think it was in the last pile. This card came out. And now I remember it now because that was the last pile. So I ended the reading. And then I blew out the candle, and the candle would not fully go out. So it ended up splashing wax like all over my table. And unfortunately, on this card, um, so yeah, but there's Pondweed, Pondering a Growing Guilt. And we have Aloneness. So this is the Hermit in traditional tarot. And then you have, so yeah, you have Virgo energy. So that's interesting since we have the Hermit, which is associated with Virgo energy. We have Cancer energy. And yeah, very strong Virgo. So this is the energy that you have that unconsciously influences other people. So with strong Virgo energy, well, okay, hold on. You have the Aloneness card. So I would say there's an energy within you that does like to spend time alone. Maybe you do like to isolate, Or I also sense with Virgo, maybe, Virgo does relate to like routines and things like that. So maybe it's like you have a very busy schedule, you have a very busy sort of routine, and maybe you're very organized and prioritize certain goals over maybe relationships. Because I thought it was interesting. You got aloneness with this sort of Virgo energy, and I guess it's like the hermit, so kind of being absent a little bit, which I found interesting considering the pondweed card that you have. So it's the angler merit, and so certain traits that you might have that unconsciously influences other people could be that you're patient, reflective, and maybe a bit stoic. So maybe you don't always show a whole lot of emotion. Um, let's see. And now I'm not really gonna read too much from the book, but this pondweed card, and I don't know if you guys were interested in your next life adventure, maybe. I think that's did that reading I think that reading only had 4 piles. I could be wrong, but it was the last pile that had the pondweed card. If for whatever reason you're interested in that reading and might have been drawn to that pile for whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe there's like messages there for you. But what I found interesting about this card specifically, since you do have the aloneness card, and I showed that pile in the other reading this in the book. It has this sort of like search for missing girl called off, which I find interesting considering this sort of hermit energy and aloneness. So it's like maybe when you do spend a lot of time by yourself in isolation, or people don't hear from you, people are kind of missing you, that maybe influences people a lot more than you realize. Um, so it also says here this sort of like little help wanted page. It says must be nice. So I would assume you're a nice person. You're hardworking. Yeah, it says able to work weekends and work alone. Like I definitely don't feel like you have issues with working alone. Maybe you're someone who at work, if you do have to work with other people, you're the type to kind of just carry everything on your own and do it all yourself, maybe because you feel you could do it better, you do it more efficiently, something like that. Or you're just a very hard worker. I could definitely sense that with the Virgo energy coming out so strong in your reading. So, yeah, one thing that I'm getting as far as an energy within you that might influence people more than you realize is sort of like hardworking energy, maybe busy, maybe very independent, and kind of taking care of your stuff often, and maybe not having a whole lot of time for other people or certain relationships. Um, You have a lot of wisdom with the High Priestess. So you kind of, and especially with the Hermit energy coming out and Virgo and the High Priestess, this is someone who's extremely detail oriented, someone who really notices very small things. Um, it's hard to, like, I would assume you are someone who's really easy, like, it's really easy for you to pick up on lies or deceit or like inconsistencies. So you're probably someone who's very smart. You notice a lot. Nothing can really scooch by you like without you noticing it. So yeah, again, you're very smart. I would assume you have a very efficient way of doing things, and it could be that maybe you communicate about these things, that I would do it this way because it makes so much more sense to do it this way, and then maybe just communicating that. And maybe it's not directed towards anyone, and you're just kind of thinking of better ways of doing things. Maybe it does kind of trigger people a little bit to think, why didn't I think of that? Or like something about your success, your intelligence makes people feel in comparison that they're lacking that or they don't have enough of that. It could be that people feel, or like there's an energy within you that can easily kind of detach from things or cut things out. Or maybe you suddenly disappear out of nowhere and that influences people a lot more than you realize. I wonder with the pondweed, this pondering a growing guilt, the way I see that card, it could either be you feel guilty for doing those things, like especially if you know someone's looking forward to your company and maybe you can't give that sort of energy at that time and you need to spend time alone. Maybe there's a lot of guilt in not being able to give people more of your energy. And maybe that's something that, it unconsciously influences people more than you realize. Otherwise, I also kind of feel like with the pondweed card is kind of like other people's energy because of your energy, where I guess that would maybe fall into more of how it affects other people. But maybe in some way, the guilt you feel for not working hard enough, for not doing good enough. Like, of course, Virgo energy is very perfectionistic, very self critical, and can also be critical of other people. That energy within you, maybe it causes other people to feel guilty about what they're not doing good enough or they're not doing well enough, or maybe when they get a little bit lazy or something like that. Um, I feel like because you notice so much, you're very skilled at things. Whether it's, I would assume it's more practical things with Virgo here. And yeah, I would say it's like people see you doing things and they see you doing things very efficiently, and maybe you have a lot of intelligence, you figured a lot out, and maybe people kind of see you as wanting to be perfect and essentially is very kind of perfect. Like um, maybe it would take a lot to impress you, kind of thing. Uh, yeah, I feel like maybe it comes from some sort of internal guilt you feel for not doing good enough. And wanting to perfect yourself, and maybe people kind of notice that, and then it it makes them question, like, maybe I should do things better. Maybe I shouldn't be so lazy. There could also be something here about like this sort of idea of like being missing, being independent, doing your own thing, and maybe not always having a lot of time to give to other people or relationships. It could be in some way that um, because with High Priestess energy, it is very smart, it's very wise, notices very small details, very intuitive. I also can kind of see the High Priestess is like wanting to know so much about something or someone specifically. And it could be like with that being next to the scythe as well. I just have this feeling that you're very good at detaching, possibly from people. And it could be that there's people around you that really struggle to detach from relationships, especially when it's more like a codependent situation. They might look at you and see that you do this so easily, and maybe you're very independent and you don't need a whole lot of support or attention. It makes them kind of feel like, again, they're maybe not doing things in the best way. Or there's something about you that seems to be like more perfect or something. Like you don't seem to struggle with those things. So, okay, if you resonate with that, and that's the energy within you that, unconsciously or maybe even subconsciously influences people more than you realize, let's see exactly how it affects other people. You have this mushroom card. It's the Scarlet Elf Cup. It says healing, a time to heal and fill your cup. Can't speak. Let's see. You also have consciousness. This is the Ace of Swords. We have Ocelot. Oh, interesting. Tuning. And then we also have uncertainty, doubtful slash confident. Okay. I think the strongest energy that you kind of carry is this sort of like independent energy, maybe really valuing your alone time, like you enjoy that. I think maybe there's people around you that really do feel uncomfortable being alone. And they look at you and they see that you're so comfortable on your own. You don't need a whole lot of support. You don't need a lot of attention. You don't maybe need a lot of company to feel like content with life. And maybe it's like things that you've said about those things. Like maybe you've talked about maybe a perspective and why you're so independent or something like that. I think there are people around you that kind of struggle with codependency, not really feeling comfortable alone. And maybe it's something that you've said that made them kind of realize something with this Ace of Swords consciousness card. Like, especially with your High Priestess energy, being able to see into maybe emotions or situations very deeply, and maybe like this is in like regard to other people and how they act or how they do things, how they feel about things or how they react to things. Maybe you've studied those things within yourself very deeply so you can kind of see those things within other people. And I don't know, I feel like there's people around you that get the sense that you see into them a little bit too deeply. Maybe you see where they do have codependency and maybe that's not a good thing. Like maybe that's something you should work on. Like there's something that I thought of recently where I see a lot of sort of I guess posts that say like I just wish someone would care, something like that. Like nobody cares, I wish someone would care, these types of things. And like yeah, it's really nice to have someone to care about you. I don't think we should really expect anyone to do that. Like, it's not necessarily anyone's job to care about us, but it is kind of an honor when they do, and they just choose to do that. And when you're so, like, you really look for that in people, like someone to take care of you, someone to care about how you feel about things. And maybe you're going to feel so upset until someone does care about what you're going through, or eventually you just kind of get through that feeling because nobody was there to carry that burden with you. There's a lot of strength to someone who doesn't need that and doesn't look for that and can kind of fill their cup on their own. So I really see with this sort of like healing energy. That's what it says right here. A time to heal and fill your cup. Not necessarily waiting for someone to come around and fill your cup for you. So maybe you're someone who does that. You take care of yourself. Maybe you go absent at times, and that's taking care of certain responsibilities, getting things done, and maybe also taking care of yourself. I feel like you have a very stable energy to you, and I think people are a little threatened by it and a little bit triggered by it because it shows them where they can improve, and a lot of people do feel uncomfortable kind of looking at that and acknowledging that within themselves. But it seems like you really do influence people to kind of like look at things differently. Maybe you shift their perspective of things. You kind of like awaken their mind to some new way of doing things. And I think with this Ocelot card, this card also kind of talks about your territory, your space, and also sort of like solitary, like behavior or a solitary person. So I think you make people realize in some way that, yeah, it's nice when people care about you. It's an honor, but we shouldn't necessarily just wait around for someone to do that. We should get up and start taking care of ourselves. Because honestly, no one's going to know how to take care of us better than we do. And I think if you're always kind of waiting around for someone to care about you and care about your problems to help you feel better, well, you're probably going to be disappointed a lot of the times. And maybe you know that and you've been through that. And maybe you have been alone through a lot of your life and maybe had to figure things out on your own. And while it wasn't easy, it did bring a lot of strength and an ability to take care of yourself and not necessarily need to rely on anyone else. So, yeah, I think you make people question, like, am I okay on my own? Maybe I should work on that and learn to be more okay on my own. And maybe it's not such a sad thing, and maybe it is a good thing to have alone time and spend time with yourself. And I think with your sort of Virgo, like hermit energy, what people see in you is you're not doing everything like everybody else is. You're content doing your own thing, maybe being alone, or it's like the way you do things, it's not like you're looking for approval or support from everyone else. And I think that sort of energy that you have does inspire people to be stronger and not look to other people for support so much and kind of take on that role for themselves. Um, and maybe there's something you've said around relationships that makes them realize that it is good to have a sense of independence within relationships, and it kind of helps ease pressure in relationships. So mostly what you've done, like your energy that you have, kind of makes people look at themselves and think like, oh, maybe I should switch things up a bit. Maybe I should look at things a little differently. And it kind of like, it doesn't create like a dramatic or drastic transformation in people, but it opens their mind up a little bit and causes them to kind of question themselves and be open to trying new ways of doing things or new ways of thinking about things, and just taking sort of like small steps to kind of do things differently or improve themselves in some way. Because I feel like when people look at you, they're like, damn, what do you struggle with? Because it doesn't seem like maybe you struggle with much. You have everything under control. You have your shit together, kind of thing. And it kind of makes people aware of when they're a little bit messy, and maybe at first they're triggered by it, or a little offended in some way, but then I think over time it kind of seeps into their mind a little bit more, and then they start questioning things a little bit more, and again become open to kind of changing their way of doing things, with that tuning card kind of like just figuring out something that works a little bit better for them. And I think it's a good energy, even though maybe people are a little bit intimidated by it at first. So I hope that makes sense to you. I'm going to end your reading here, Pile 1. So thank you for watching. I hope it was interesting for you to listen to. Um, and yeah, that's it. I'll see you in the next reading. Bye. Alright, Pile 2, welcome to your reading. So you chose this is some quartz with epidote. This is one of, I would say, probably one of my favorite crystals in my collection. I love green, if you couldn't tell. But let's see. So this reading is like kind of split into two sections. So first we're going to be looking at cards that kind of represent the energy that's within you that unconsciously it influences other people around you. And then the second set of cards is more of like how that energy actually affects the people around you or influences them. So the first card we have the snake. You have the Wheel of Fortune. Oh, this one was interesting. So we have some Sagittarius energy with the Wheel of Fortune. We have drowning, fighting a costly affliction's weight. You have sorrow, that's the Nine of Swords. And we have Pisces energy. So yeah, I think the coolest thing here is I think something about your energy comes across as very spiritual, with Sagittarius and Pisces energy coming up. I would assume you have a lot of optimism to you. Like naturally you might be a very optimistic person, which I find interesting. Like your reading is very interesting. We have this like sorrow energy and drowning, like fighting a costly affliction's weight. So let's look at the book for that one. You have the Angler merit. So, and Pile 1 also got the Angler merit. So that's basically certain traits that you have that could unconsciously influence people around you. Could be your patience, reflectiveness, and like maybe a stoic sort of personality or look to you. So maybe you don't. Yeah, definitely. What I sense in your energy is that you've been through a lot, but you don't show it. And so it's kind of like confusing for people around you. So maybe it's like you've talked about things that you've been through, and through other people's eyes, like it should really bring you down. It should really make you feel depressed. You shouldn't be doing as well as you're doing if you've been through that much. So there's something about you, and I think that's interesting considering the snake and the Pisces energy comes up. It seems like you come across as some sort of illusion for people. Um, so your card for drowning, let's see. I am going to read this to you. So it says, November 11th. You awake? Yep, you blacked out there for a bit. Take it easy. You're at a hospital now. Sure glad I remembered the life jackets this time. I had dozed off when you slipped. Hit your head real hard on the boat before you went overboard. Lucky I grabbed you before the current did. Get some rest and take the week off, alright? You're not that busy anyways. Okay, so yeah, interesting. Some sort of like maybe this person got a concussion. Um, and yeah, some sort of like injury. So I don't know. Maybe you've had some sort of injury recently. It doesn't have to be a physical sort of pain that you've been through. It could be an emotional sort of pain you've been through. Maybe even both. But I think with the drowning energy and sorrow, um, it's either that the energy within you is that you've been through a lot, but your energy doesn't show that you have. Like, you still have a lot of optimism, you still have a lot of hope for the future, and maybe there's a belief that your life is turning in the right direction. And there's people around you who maybe can't understand that such an optimistic personality has been through so much negativity. Like, you should think negatively, you should be a negative person if you've been through that. Otherwise, maybe it's the other way around, where naturally you're an optimistic person, um, and you tend to look at the bright side of things and the bright side of life, and it may be hard to get you down. So for some of you, maybe it's that you are going through sort of a more rough period right now, and maybe it's that because naturally you've been such a happy person, people don't necessarily take it seriously, or they don't really fully believe that you are going through something so difficult. Maybe at this time, or for some of you, it's like in the past, they don't believe that you've been through something so difficult, um, or something about it didn't affect you the way it affects other people, or something like that. It just seems to me with the snake and Pisces energy that someone's thinking that you're definitely like an illusion of some sort, and there's a very positive energy and also a very negative energy here. So that's kind of what I'm getting through that. And let's see kind of like how that does affect other people around you. So you have the shaggy ink cap. This is growth slash destruction cycle. Every stage, every stage of your evolutionary growth has a cycle and a purpose. Interesting considering it talks about cycles when we have the Wheel of Fortune, which does kind of talk about cycles. The Wheel of Fortune, I've heard a lot of the times, and this can kind of go with Sagittarius energy. I think it's something with like moon placement and Sagittarius energy. Maybe I have moon in the ninth house. I have a lot of planets in the ninth house. But something I think I read for moon in the ninth house can be someone who deals with a lot of like ups and downs in their emotions. So maybe that's something that you have where you do go up and down with your emotions a lot in this sort of like growth and destruction cycle. Maybe you do have periods where you're really down and you're going through some really tough things. I would say you still have a very optimistic sort of mindset because even when you come out of those things, it seems like things are really looking up for you. You're very optimistic. You're looking forward to what's coming next and maybe feeling like things are easy or you're stepping into some more luck. So I think you're someone who kind of knows that life does have ups and downs for everyone, although it could be to different degrees for different people. I would actually say something that people miss about you is that, yeah, like maybe your down moments, you've been very low. And maybe because certain people see you when you're not in that sort of like down period, they couldn't believe that you went through that or that really affected you or something like that. So we have night blooming water lily. Let's here, hold on. We have stress. We have reflection, outward slash inward. And then we have pleasure. Okay, this is very interesting because we have some positive energy. I would say like the Wheel of Fortune brings such a positive energy. It's really amplified. And you have two cards here that are more on the negative side within your energy. I guess I don't think the snake is really like a negative or positive energy. I just think that's people's confusion with you, especially also with Pisces. People are definitely very confused about you, whether you're being truthful about the things you've been through or not, or how much it's affected you or not. Or it's like, if it doesn't seem like it's affected you that much, or maybe you're just not dealing with those things anymore and things are a lot more calm for you now. There's something about people being confused about whether you really went through something difficult or not, or if it really affected you deeply or not. Or if you're lying about it or not, or something like that. I don't necessarily think people think you're lying, but they may think that you're exaggerating something. And I don't think you are. I just think people, maybe the people around you, just can't really understand those types of things. Because how it affects people, we have the stress energy here, and this is the Seven of Wands, so this could also be some sort of defensiveness. And again, I would say it's like there might be people around you who feel that they've been through a lot. And, maybe it's that you've actually been through a lot worse than these people have. But it doesn't seem like it, maybe because you do have a very spiritual energy and you have sort of healed from a lot of maybe trauma or just sort of negative experiences in life, and you've been able to kind of get over it. Especially with a Sagittarius energy, you get back up quickly. You don't let things really drag you down for too long. And there's a strength within you. I think how it affects people around you is maybe not in the most positive way, but I wouldn't be too worried about it because it seems to be honestly more of their problem than it is from you. And I don't think people are necessarily taking what you say in, maybe your experience in, and this sort of energy of not really believing you kind of fits in with the Seven of Wands of maybe being quite defensive. Like maybe I would assume for some of you, it could be that you were trying to help someone who was going through something difficult, and maybe you were trying to explain, like, hey, I've been through what you've been through, or maybe you've even been through worse than what they've been through. So in some way, maybe you're showing that, like, hey, there's still light at the end of the tunnel. You can get through this. Um, and maybe bringing in a more spiritual perspective of things or something like that. And I would say there's people around you who reject your ideas, maybe think that you're exaggerating or lying about things. And again, don't get mad at me because I don't think that's true, but I think these people are struggling and they don't see how they have a way out or a better perspective of it. And because they're really struggling with it and it really stresses them out and they can't see a way out, they would assume, well, you just didn't have it hard enough. I have it way harder than you because I can't get out of it. That's not necessarily true. Actually, something I would say, and I've mentioned this in I mentioned this reading in pile one, and my next life adventure reading that I did a couple readings ago. I kind of explained this, that I think it was that reading, that a lot of the times people may not initiate change until things get really bad. Like a situation might be bad and they acknowledge that it's bad on some level, but maybe they can kind of deal with it. It's not that bad. They can kind of still deal with it, and so they don't do anything to fix it or change it or make it better. A good example might be like a health issue. An example I could think of is like people who smoke cigarettes. They're aware that it's causing damage. They know that. I'm sure they have plenty of people tell them that, and they're not really going to look at that or take that seriously. And it's not that big of a deal because it's not a serious problem yet. Does that make sense? So like once they, I don't know, get lung cancer, that's when people like that tend to switch their way of doing things. They initiate change, they stop smoking, they quit, and then maybe they even sort of promote the idea of quitting to other people. But they would have never done that unless things got bad enough to kind of create this like catalyst for them to start doing things differently. So, where was I going with that? um, I see that here, and I think what I was trying to explain was something that you went through must have been bad enough for you to initiate change and do things differently. Because you're not struggling with it now doesn't mean the struggle wasn't there previously and that it wasn't very bad. It could have been very bad, and maybe it was worse than what people around you are going through right now. And because it was so bad for you, you had no other choice but to do something differently, initiate some sort of change, and get yourself out of it, essentially. So there might be people around you who are stressed out, struggling with something. It could be for some of them like related to relationships or a sense of like inner peace or something like that. We have this sort of pleasure energy. And I think people look at you and it makes them feel frustrated that they're not able to get through what they're going through, or it makes them frustrated that they're not able to enjoy life as easily as maybe you do. When you say you've been through so much, then why are you enjoying life? Why are you optimistic? They don't see that, they don't get that, because maybe they haven't gotten to the point where it's bad enough that they do initiate change. They do things differently. They have no other choice and they're desperate to get out. I don't think they've reached that point yet. I don't know if they will. And some people will kind of just struggle with things throughout their life and maybe never find solutions. I think you're someone who did find a lot of solutions, and people around you are making excuses for you, calling you a liar or saying you're exaggerating or it must have not been that bad compared to them, which in fact maybe it was even worse than what they've been through, if that makes sense. But I think there's people around you who, especially if you do kind of speak in more spiritual terms, not, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but there might be people around you who aren't necessarily open to that or don't really understand that. And there's some sort of rejection that comes when maybe they hear your advice or hear what you've been through. Again, it's an illusion to them, it's confusing to them, it doesn't make sense to them. Um, but I think it's because of a lack of experience why it doesn't make sense to them and why they would say you're exaggerating or you're lying or something like that. So I hope you understand where they're coming from, although it's kind of shitty, to be honest. Um, I do think, kind of similarly to pile one's energy, I sense a more like defensive energy in your pile as far as the way your energy affects other people and influences them. I think it frustrates them. It causes them to want to like deny anything you say, reject everything you say, not take it in. Um, but I think there's something about you that comes across as very loving, very supportive, and wanting the best for people. And I think it's not so much that they think you're a liar or you exaggerate. I think it's just that they don't understand it themselves. So they're trying to figure it out. And maybe part of that is like, well, if I'm struggling so much in their perspective and they got through it, then I should be able to as well. And maybe they just haven't found the answers, but they're thinking that, well, because I can't find the answers and because I'm still struggling, this means that I have it worse than the people around me did. Or this means that they're exaggerating, or maybe they're lying. And I think it's a sort of questioning if what you've said is true or not. And I think there's something about your energy that causes people to kind of, and again, it's more of a questioning rather than claiming that you're lying or exaggerating things. I think they're questioning it, and because it doesn't make sense to them, and they're very confused. And I think there might be something about your energy that is very loving and very supportive, very peaceful. And I think they they still don't understand it, but they think that they're missing something. And I think that's why there's a lot of questioning going on in the people around you. Um, I think they see something within you that makes them think that you do have a lot of truth to what you say, that there is a lot of value to what you say, maybe the advice you give or the experiences that you've been through, and maybe how you got yourself out of them. Um, and I think people think that, especially if they're stressed out in life, not doing well, maybe there's something about your energy that causes them to think, is there a way I could create more happiness in my life? Is there a way I can um, enjoy life a little bit more, look on the brighter side of life? I think you do that well, and I think people around you might struggle to do that. And maybe there's something about you. Maybe you really talk about like maybe positive affirmations and really taking care of your mind in that way and not being mean to yourself. I would say maybe there's people around you who are constantly mean to themselves, looking for the negative things in life, and you don't look for that. And maybe it's causing people to question, like, yeah, I guess if I do constantly look at negative things in my life, um, yeah, I'm probably going to notice that a lot more and think about those things a lot more. And I think there's people around you that want peace. They don't want to feel stressed. They don't want to get upset over every little thing. Um, and I think they're just trying to figure out ways that they can have more fun in their day to day life. And that maybe things are not as bad as they make things seem, which is funny because I think they're confused about you, and again, maybe considering like whether you're exaggerating things or not. And again, it's not because they think that you're a liar or they've seen something within you that says, oh, yeah, they lie. I've seen it. They're inconsistent with their words or their stories. I don't think you are, but I think they just can't wrap their head around it. So they're trying to figure out why and make excuses in some way and kind of like, well, if they're doing so good and they're saying they've been through these terrible things, then I should see that. I should see that maybe in their energy or their emotions, or they should be more negative if things were really that tough for them. And maybe they're kind of looking at things and being like, um, first of all, I would say maybe they're exaggerating their problems a little bit more than needed. And I think in some way they've realized that, and I think they're kind of looking at things in their life and just trying to find more peace and find more happiness and pleasure and things to kind of love, and again kind of like find ways to be optimistic about their own life. And maybe it reminds me of like having a gratitude journal or something like that. Like maybe you do that, or mentally you do that, or maybe you've even said something about doing that. And there could be people around you who kind of laugh at that at first, but I think there's something where they understand that people don't always show on the outside exactly what they've been through throughout their lives, or maybe what they're going through on the inside or something like that. So for some of you, it could be that, you are going through something difficult and you don't show it and you act very optimistic. And maybe you have talked about some of the more negative things you've been through recently, and it just seems like people can't really believe you because you seem to be doing good otherwise, I guess. And I guess it's just making them kind of see things a little deeper. And yeah, sometimes people are going through terrible things and they don't show it. There is also kind of this saying that people that laugh the loudest or laugh the most are actually the most lonely. So maybe they're thinking about things like that and realizing, like, yeah, the way people portray themselves on the outside doesn't always match what's going on the inside. And I think they're looking at you and kind of realizing that, yeah, you've probably been through some like terrible things, or maybe you're going through something difficult right now. Um, and you don't let that be an excuse to stop your joy. I think you still find ways to have fun and laugh and look forward to life and the future. And I think they're looking at you and they're like, well, if they've been through that and they can still have this optimistic spirit and mindset, then why can't I? And I think it's causing them to, at first, there's a rejection of it. And then I think kind of like pile one, there's more of like an openness to learning from you in some way. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that resonates with you. Again, this is something that's should be unconscious, so maybe it's not something you're fully aware of. But I would assume like most people are kind of subconscious, like there's an awareness of it to an extent, but maybe you don't always know how it affects other people or how much it does influence other people. It is in a positive way, but I kind of like pile one, there might be a bit of a triggered feeling at first and a rejection of maybe your advice or your perspective, or again feeling confused as if you're exaggerating something or not. And I think there's a realization that you weren't exaggerating, and it causes them to question things a lot overall is what I see. So I hope that the messages were fun for you to listen to. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next reading. Bye. All right, pile 3, welcome to your reading. So we're going to find out how you unconsciously influence people around you. So you chose this rock here, this crystal. This is apophyllite, and one time I posted this online and someone said it looked like a chicken wing. Like, I'm guessing like this looks like a drumstick. So I was just thinking about that before I started your reading. So it does make me question, like maybe for some of you, the way you kind of unconsciously influence other people is maybe like your diet routine, or like, well, yeah, you're just your diet, the things you eat. Whether I would say whether you eat healthily or not. Like if you eat healthily, maybe people are inspired or influenced to eat better themselves, or also maybe if you do eat some yummy, maybe high calorie foods, it kind of influences people to live a little, eat something sweet or high in calorie, or not really care about those things, something like that. But let's take a look at your cards. So we have the moon, we have the sun. So I explained to the other two piles that I kind of split this reading into two sections, and the first cards that we're pulling kind of represents the energy you have that does the influencing, and then the second set of cards will kind of talk about um, how exactly it influences other people around you. So you have trail shelter, doubting a homestead's future. We have conditioning. This is Capricorn energy. It's also the devil. And then you have Uranus. I remembered this card specifically for your pile. And so, yeah, I kind of feel like maybe you resonate more with, well, actually, I don't think it really matters. Some of you could have like maybe like a diet, like a strict diet, and it kind of influences people to think about the way they eat and maybe integrating healthier foods into their diet. And it doesn't really matter if you don't necessarily resonate with that or not, because I would say even if you don't always care about the way you eat, maybe there's something that's very free about. Sorry, I'm not always going to be connecting it to food throughout your reading, but I just kind of got drawn to the sort of drumstick chicken wing rock energy. So I'm going to talk about that first and then move into like other things, because I do see a lot of other things here. But I could see for some of you, maybe you actually struggled with like an eating disorder at one point, and maybe if you don't struggle with that anymore, maybe I should, I guess, give a quick trigger warning if any of you did deal with things like that. But I kind of see this sort of breaking free um, from anything that holds you back or keeps you feeling trapped, and definitely eating disorders can do that. So I could see like maybe some of you have struggled with something like that in the past, and now those things don't really hold you back or keep you trapped, and maybe you feel free to kind of eat however you want, and it doesn't necessarily affect you deeply. So I could see something like that too. But other than the sort of food, like message coming through. You seem to be someone who has a lot of success and is again able to kind of break free from conditioning. You literally have the card of conditioning, and that card does talk about breaking free from things and realizing that you're able to be different than the people around you. So I do feel like maybe, it could be your childhood or society. The interesting thing with Uranus there is, again, kind of breaking free from tradition, from the way people typically do things, and maybe thinking more outside of the box. And I think that's allowed you to really, again, kind of like break free and be more authentic, more of like an individual, not necessarily following what everybody else does, what everybody else thinks. And maybe it seems as if you've had a lot of success in doing that with the sun and the moon. Well, that's cool too because I mean the moon, especially in this Lenormand deck that I have, doesn't really relate to like the tarot meaning of the moon, which would be more like intuition, emotions, and things like that. It's more about recognition, success, being seen. So in it, that with the sun, yeah, you definitely carry an energy of having a lot of success and maybe being very free from certain things that kept you trapped in the past. So we have like Leo energy here with the sun, which is also interesting since we have a lion on this like conditioning devil card. So we also have a little bit of Capricorn energy. I said that. We have Aquarius energy here with Uranus. So, yeah, it definitely just feels like you're free from whatever conditioning you were trapped in the past, and you've broke free. You're not being tied down by any sort of, traditional way things, um, traditional things that hold people back. So let me take a look at the Trail Shelter card. I think it's the Adventurer. Yeah. So you have the Adventurer merit. So certain like personality traits, things you have that maybe unconsciously influences people around you could be a restlessness, headstrong, and competitive. Which this is interesting. So I was just looking at if you know about human design, I'll kind of just briefly go over it because I don't want to waste too much time. But it reminds me of this energy. Um, the gate that I was born under, which I believe is like around June 30th to the beginning of July. I was born on the 4th, so somewhere around there. Then you could have been born under a gate 39, which is the provocateur. And I find it interesting that it's related to Cancer energy, but seems to scream like Uranus energy or Aquarius energy, like wanting to do things differently, thinking outside the box, challenging status quo, and all for progress and evolution. And a lot of the times people do want to cling to tradition and not do things differently. And especially when society does it this way, it's kind of scary to do it differently and go against what society thinks is right or, what is commonly done within society. So I think you're not afraid to kind of be your own person and go against what maybe society believes or thinks and kind of just, have your own ideas about things. And it can be like, I think people see you as extremely successful, that it works in your favor. And maybe I would assume, like, we'll get like kind of into how it affects people. So we'll see that. But I'm assuming it kind of gets people to kind of break free from tradition or the status quo and kind of be open to trying outside of the box way of doing things. Um, let's see. Okay, this is interesting actually. So I gave some dates earlier, like June 30th to July 4th. We have a date July 6th in the book. So I guess I'll read this. It says, and then on the second night, we didn't get to the Cottonwood site until 1 a.m. and had to share it with some of the Forest Service dudes. It was totally nuts. I've got another hike planned already. Need a solo outing to get away from some shit. My dad's kind of being an ass lately, saying the whole no free lunch thing. He might start bugging you for rent there soon. He's got this dumb development project near you that's taking all his time. Calls it his baby, whatever that means. His new girlfriend doesn't even sorry, doesn't even care that he's gone all the time. No free lunch, my ass. Stay sane up there. So I don't know. Maybe you do have this sort of like the way this is written, kind of like a, I don't know, harsh kind of attitude when you speak about things. I definitely could get that with like a sort of Capricorn and Aquarius energy, even Leo sometimes. Very bold, very strong, confident energy that you give off, and kind of maybe intimidating. I would assume people may be a little bit like hesitant to approach you, especially if you speak that way. Um, doesn't necessarily mean that that's how you speak towards people when they do approach you, though. Like maybe that's around people you're comfortable with. Um, But yeah, I would say for some of you, it seems like maybe you've been heavily influenced in the past by maybe society or certain conditioning you've been through. And when you realized you could break free from it, maybe it brought a lot of healing, a lot more happiness, a lot more joy, maybe a lot more success. And I think there's something about when people look at you and they see how like well you're doing, maybe how much recognition you get. How successful you seem to be. Let's see. So you have this mushroom card, Parrot Wax Cap. Isolation. Find wisdom in isolation. All that you need to grow is within you. We have Aurora. Let's see, hold on. The Source, so that's the Ace of Wands. We have Attention, resistant slash surrendered. Interesting, okay. Yeah, okay, and we have Awakening. I'm not surprised actually, because Uranus energy can bring breakthroughs, right? So awakenings, understanding something from a different point of view or on a different level. Um, it's interesting because it doesn't necessarily show through in the cards that represent your energy. But I would assume, yeah, definitely a more spiritual perspective and breaking free from the normal ways people think about things and do things. That does happen a lot of the times when you go through a spiritual awakening. You see things from a different perspective, and it does carry through in the rest of entire the entirety of your life. Like it changes a lot. So I would assume you're someone who's been through some massive like transformations within maybe your mind that has also affected your life in very positive ways. And there's, it seems like you have a lot of success and you have a lot of the right ideas about things, and the way you do things seems to work in your favor and work for you. So that's something that people can't not notice about you. Um, and it's interesting here, since we have this sort of isolation energy. Find wisdom in isolation. All you need to grow is within you. Which, again, fits very well with this idea of not following the crowd. Like, what do you think? What do you know? What do you want to do? Don't listen to necessarily anyone else. Or don't feel the pressure to you do things the way everyone else does or think the way everyone else does. Um, there's this sort of idea I've heard about, someone talk about this idea that it's bad to go outside of the tribe, to do things differently, because in the past when we needed to survive, we needed to be in a group to do that, and we needed to stay within the group to survive, because if we're on our own we become very defenseless. Our chances of survival definitely decreases quite a bit, like significantly. So from that point, it became a very normal thing to just do what everybody else does and to stay within the group and not, leave the group or do things differently from the group, because that could lower your chances of survival. And I think to this day people have a fear of, going outside the group, thinking differently, doing differently, because it can cause judgment, and people might be confused about it, and they're like, well, nobody else is doing it that way. Why would you think that that's the right answer? Um, and it's funny because those same people will cling to these ideas that are clearly not working for them. Well, why do you think that's the answer? If it's, you've been doing it that way for a while and it's still not working, try something different, do something else. And I think you are not afraid to do that, and you have done that, and it's worked in your favor in some way. And part of it could be not relying again on other people, not relying on a group of people, not relying on what other people think and what people like other people do, and doing it just like them. This card really reminds me of hermit energy, kind of blocking out society and figuring out what works for you or what's meaningful to you, not necessarily based on anybody else's expectations. So you're definitely like independent and able to stand on your own. And I think there's some sort of, I do connect the source. Usually I don't read the cards this way. Like I would read it more like an Ace of Wands type of energy. But it seems like you have a lot of passion, and maybe you influence other people to find their passion in life. Um, and the Aces do talk about something that's new, something that's just begun. So I do feel like um, when people look at you and the way you influence people around you, it kind of gives them some confidence to kind of do things in their own way and not necessarily look to everyone else to approve of what they're doing or what they're thinking. Um, and it's a very spiritual energy that comes through in the way you influence other people with this sort of aurora card and awakening. Like you probably give people kind of like intense realizations about things, and you shift people's minds in a way that makes them see things from different perspectives. And it seems like specifically for you, it's more tied to like being, as this kind of came out, I think, in pile one too, but like being on your own, not necessarily seeking validation from people around you with this attention card. Like in the imagery, she has a hole in her chest and there's like fish swimming through it. So almost like connecting fish energy to Pisces energy, which sometimes can be like illusions, or, also like really wanting to connect with people on a deep level. And maybe there's people around you that do feel like there's a hole in their heart that they need to fill, maybe through attention from other people. And in some way, you're making people aware of that, and maybe that's not necessarily going to be the healthiest way to go about things. Um, it came out in another reading, and I think it was pile one of like, fill your cup. Don't necessarily wait for someone to come by and fill your cup for you. You might be waiting for a long time in that scenario. So I feel like, I don't know, you get people to think on a more spiritual level about things and consider a more spiritual perspective of life, which I found very interesting, considering that doesn't necessarily show through in your energy. But yeah, definitely opening people up to a more spiritual side of life. And even the Aurora card kind of relates to our ancestors, which is interesting considering I was thinking about like back, long time ago when we needed to actually survive, and, form groups in order to ensure survival. In some way, you're probably making people think of the way their parents thought about things and how that's affected them, and maybe they can kind of let go of their parents' beliefs if it's not actually, working for them. So yeah, kind of like opening people up to a more spiritual side of life, especially with the Ace of Wands being called the source. So yeah, kind of also influencing other people to access like an inner sort of power that they have, that, all that they need to grow is within them, not necessarily outside of them, not from the people around them telling them what to do, things like that. So I hope that that makes sense to you, and I hope this reading was interesting to listen to. Thank you for watching Pile 3. I'm going to end your reading here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Okay, Pile 4, welcome to your reading. So you chose this apophyllite crystal. So let's take a look at your cards. The first set of cards are going to explain the energy that exists within you that influences people around you unconsciously. And then the second set of cards is kind of explaining how exactly it does affect people around you or like influence them. So the first card you have, number 33, the key. We have strength, so there's some Leo energy. So we got some Leo energy in the last pile too. And I do remember one card from your reading, which does make me kind of think that your pile might be pretty similar to pile 3 actually. But we have conservation. Whoa. Yeah, conservationist. There we go. Envisioning a responsible future. That's interesting because the last pile... Oh, I don't need to look at the card. It was doubting a homestead's future, which is interesting considering yours feels very similar, but it's envisioning a responsible future. We have isolation, the 3 of swords. And then we have Aquarius energy. This is the card that I remembered. Because pile 3 got Uranus, and now you have Aquarius. So kind of like very similar... Well, at least zodiac signs popping up for the last 2 readings. Okay. But actually, I would say your reading actually feels like a different reading. Maybe it was pile 2's reading that seems kind of more similar, but let's see. I'm going to take a look at the conservationalist. No, this is what I want to say. Conservationist. There we go. Okay, so that's an angler merit, and most of the piles did get the angler merit, so you could be patient, reflective, and stoic. Definitely Aquarius energy, I would say, is generally patient, and definitely stoic, sometimes reflective. I don't always think of Aquarius people as liking to do that too much, depends, for sure. But, let's see. I really admire Aquarius energy, by the way. So it's definitely no hate. So let's see. Hold on here. So it's part of the regulator merit, so laws and responsibilities. So maybe there's something about you, and this would be maybe a little bit different than pile 3 actually. And there's something about maybe wanting to stick to certain rules and maybe even tradition, which would be very different from pile 3's energy. Let's see, it's number 39. Okay, so I will read this little thing here. It doesn't really, it's kind of more like a story rather than talking about, I guess, the card specifically, but maybe it relates to it. So we have a date here, November 20th. Says, Mom released fish every chance she got. Said it would pay off in the future for everyone. Dad, though, he just clubbed them into the cooler. Back then, right as business was picking up, Dad started stealing gear from the shop. He'd pawn it off and gamble his winnings away. He had a problem. Never seemed happy, always fixed on searching for something that wasn't us. I remember him sitting there, putting money into a machine, just slipping away. Nearly destroyed us. Mom took care of our empty shop best she could. All we had left were a few clients that kept us going. Finally, when Mom got sick, she gave the shop over to me before she left. Dad realized there was nothing more for him to take, so he left too. It was kind of a tough time, but with him gone, I managed to at least break even again. So kind of similarly to some of the other piles, I do feel like well, this book specifically does kind of talk a lot about certain like issues within families and parent and child relationships. So maybe you relate to that and, struggled financially growing up. Oh, yeah, that's another interesting thing. I think that's going to come through because I guess you have this card here, saving, which is interesting considering that sort of energy coming through that card. So I do feel like for some of you, some sort of energy within you, especially if you do focus on money a lot, saving money. Money is a big driving force in your life. Maybe that came from some sort of financial struggle that you dealt with in childhood, and maybe that influences people to save more. Could be the case. Interesting that that comes out. But overall, it seems like with the key and strength, I would assume you have a lot of inner strength. Not that you haven't, necessarily dealt with hardships. We have isolation with the Three of Swords, and the Three of Swords does talk about some sort of heartbreak, disappointing situation, and a lot of sort of emotional pain, right? So I would assume that you've been through a lot of emotional pain. Maybe you had to, in the story is that the dad was kind of not really there, kind of gambling his money away, kind of always seeking something outside of the family and not necessarily being an active part of the family. And then the mom gets sick, and it seems like they're kind of implying that she died. So, I could assume like maybe you didn't have a lot of help. You had to find your own solutions in life, and it required a lot of strength, whether you wanted to be strong or not. It kind of seemed like you had to be, regardless, and maybe you didn't have a lot of support. So yeah, that could make sense a lot with your angler card, envisioning a responsible future. I would assume you take your future very seriously, especially with Aquarius coming out, because Aquarius is a sign that's very future focused. So, yeah, I would assume you're very focused on your future, ensuring that you do, you are making responsible decisions for your future. And I think people see you as having a lot of willpower. You could be someone who is good at, kind of maybe resisting instant gratification for, again, your future. Like, doing things that are not necessarily easy, like, saving money. Like, it's a lot more fun to kind of just blow your money on whatever you want to rather than be disciplined and have willpower to not spend your money and save it instead. So it doesn't have to be about money for most of you, but I would assume it's like there's in some way you didn't have the support that you needed at some point. And while it was a tough situation, it was a tough time, it did make you stronger and bring, a sort of inner strength to find your own answers and not necessarily need a whole lot of outside help. And maybe you did need a lot of outside help and you didn't receive it. And again, although it was a tough situation, it did make you stronger in the end. And I would assume you're someone who's very independent and doesn't really need a lot of assistance in general. So let's see, you have this mushroom card. It's the fly agaric, if that's how you pronounce it. Expanded awareness. It's time to raise your consciousness to a higher level and see things from a different perspective. Now that does feel very similar to Pile Three's energy. They did get the Awakening card, and I think similarly to Pile 3, you do kind of expand people's awareness in some way. Maybe you influence people to think more about their future and maybe how their current actions are influencing their future, if it's going to help them in the long run or if it's not. If it's instant gratification, well, does that really help for your future? Things like that. We have coral snake. Yeah, and even this could be like this card of temptation. Maybe, you have people around you who really give in to temptation that is not going to benefit them later on. Or it's, to me, again, like maybe instant gratification. While those sorts of pleasures feel good in the moment, maybe that's kind of a waste of time to ensure a better future. This coral snake talks about, something very kind of colorful and kind of pretty to look at, but can be quite dangerous as well. So it seems like there's people around you who are looking at sort of the wrong things, is kind of giving them what they think they need or what they think they want. And maybe it doesn't really help them out later on, like in the future. Let's see, we have inner voice. So that's like the high priestess, and there's some Cancer energy coming through. Um, And then we also have receptivity, dissatisfied slash grateful. Interesting. So, I feel like because you've been through experiences where maybe you really wanted help, and maybe you didn't have support at that time and you kind of had to get through things on your own. Um, I think, this whole reading does kind of relate to some things I've been thinking about lately and a little bit going through lately. Not that I've been, don't worry about me. I've been more than fine. But it seems like there are people around you who feel dissatisfied with life. And maybe have been looking to the wrong things that they think is going to make them happy or heal them in the moment. Um, and I think there's something about your energy and being very responsible and kind of like looking at your actions now and thinking how it's going to benefit you in the long run, and kind of holding off on certain things that are maybe instant pleasures, for things that are, again, like maybe more discipline that's going to actually give you a more stable future. And having that stability within your future can, is kind of like a nice little baseline to have a little bit of a healthier and happier life. I think you cause people to kind of look at things deeper. Definitely raise your consciousness to a higher level and see things from a different perspective. And with the inner voice, with this high priestess energy, it's definitely being able to see things underneath the surface, maybe more on a subconscious level. And so maybe you're influencing people to kind of look into their subconscious a little bit, ask question why they do certain things and if that really helps in the long run or not. And I think there's people around you who are influenced by you and wanting to be more responsible, wanting to save things more often, maybe wanting to do the harder work and have more discipline to ensure a better future, a more stable future, something like that. Like, I feel like there's people around you who, again, give into temptation, give into instant gratification, instant pleasures. And those things, while they do make you feel more comfortable in the moment or happier in the moment, that doesn't necessarily fix anything. It doesn't fix issues. So I think there's something about, especially with the key coming up in your energy, you've found solutions to your problems. It seems like you're not dealing with these same problems anymore. And people around you could think that, well, it just seems like they're looking at the wrong things. And the things that they think are helping them are not usually actually fixing a problem. And maybe it's just kind of masking the problem, or, people hate hearing this, but putting a band-aid over it, essentially. Like, the wound is still there, and once you take the band-aid off, it is still there. Um, so I think you're causing people to kind of look at that, and kind of look at ways that they can, again, be more disciplined and hold out for a more responsible future. And I think you're making people realize that the things that they're looking to make them feel better in the moment, it doesn't last and it doesn't fix the problem. So I think you're making people see things on kind of a deeper level that, like, although it does feel good in the moment, it doesn't really help out in the long run. And I think, yeah, just to kind of repeat myself for the last time, question things and look at more long-term success rather than, again, instant gratification. So I hope that makes sense. I think your reading's a little bit shorter than the other ones, but I think that's okay. Thank you for watching, and I hope it was an interesting topic to listen to. But yeah, wishing you the best, Pile 4, and I'll see you in a future reading. Bye.